How you doing, guys? Eric from RuleTheWasteland.com. One of the things that I've found out doing videos and just prepping in general for 15, 20 years is that there's every once in a while you'll come across some tidbit of information that a lot of people, in the prepping community, and this happens in regular life too, but I definitely have noticed it in the preparedness kind of field, is that you'll come across a tidbit of information that everyone seems to know and share around, and it's just completely fake. One of the ones that it's just a rumor, a myth, that's just a wives' tale kind of thing that is just completely untrue. No idea where these things get started, but they sound real, and then they just start getting shared around. One of the ones that we already busted was the one that you can't store the water barrels, like the HDP plastic water barrels or IBCT totes, directly on concrete because chemicals will leach into the water. It's not true. We busted that myth. So another one that I've come across, I've heard it before over the years several times. It's not nearly as pervasive. This one's probably I've heard more often just outside of prepping, but I definitely have heard it in regards to prepping as well, is that distilled water is somehow bad for you and will strip minerals from your body or something like that. So the bottom line is it's not true, because actually distilling water is a fantastic way to get pure water in a survival situation. I think Morgan from Road Preparedness recently did a video of one of these just turnkey distillation units that you can get there on Amazon. They're actually shockingly cheap. I'll put a link in the description to some of them so you can check them out, because if you're in an area, it isn't a very energy intensive process, but if you're in an area where you have salt water, it is the simplest way to convert salt water into fresh water. And regardless of if it's salt water, you can still purify water very, very simply that way. It just takes a lot of energy. But if you're in an area deep in the woods where firewood is not an issue, or some other fuel source you have is not an issue, and you just want to be able to purify water, it's very reliable and very simple. It's not necessarily easy because you got to create all that energy, but it is simple. And the only thing it really doesn't work for is if there's any chemicals in the water that have a lower boiling point than water itself and will vaporize off before the water does. So if you have any sort of chemical, like oil or car fluids and stuff like that, different types of chemicals, then distillation might not necessarily work. But most other filters aren't made for that stuff either. So you want to avoid, industrial type contamination. But specifically for seawater, or if you're in an area where you have a lot of wood and energy, distillation as an option is extremely good. But a lot of people say, oh, you can't drink the distilled water because there's no minerals in it, and it'll somehow mess you up. It's not true. We don't get a ton of minerals from our water. We get almost exclusively from our food. And the bottom line is, if you're not getting enough minerals from your food, it won't matter how much you are or aren't getting from your water. The minerals that would be in water before you distill it are pretty basic ones: iron, calcium, zinc, stuff like that. So if you have any semblance of a decent diet, or even just add in some supplementation, which I've talked about in another video, you can just get all those things over-the-counter supplementation. But if you have a normal distribution of meat and animal products, a couple vegetables, stuff like that, you will be getting all these minerals. And there's certainly distilled water doesn't do anything negative to you. And it's never going to be completely pure anyway. I think this rumor may have started because of from the idea that truly chemically pure water can, and I'm talking 10 decimal places pure, 0.99999, which you could never get just from distilling off a pot or whatever. It would take an extremely technical process that this has to be done in a laboratory that they use for laboratory purposes and research. That at that level, the water is so pure that it tends to grab on. It's not necessarily corrosive, that's the wrong word to use, but it becomes contaminated so easy that it'll pick up minerals much more easily when it's actually truly pure water. It doesn't stay pure for long. And in that sense, maybe the people got the idea that it can strip the minerals from you. But it's still water. It's still just water. So off the shelf distilled water at Walmart, or water that you've distilled yourself, there's no danger for you. You can drink it exclusively, even for long periods of time, and unless you have deficiencies in your diet, severe ones, which would become a problem anyway, then the distilled water is not going to be an issue. So feel free to continue with distillation as a plan for purifying water in any number of disaster scenarios. Like I said, the only real downside is that you do have to have a little bit of that specialized equipment and a lot of energy. Just boiling water in general takes a lot of energy. There are different ways you can use solar distillation as well. It's a little harder to set up, but that's possible. This uses sun's energy. But feel free to drink all the distilled water you want. Make sure you're just getting real food, and you should be fine. Let me know if you've heard this one. It's not quite as common as the concrete and the water barrels one, but I have heard it a few times fairly recently, which made me think to make a video about it. And let me know if there's any other weird myths or maybe myths, things that you've heard that you don't know if they're true or not, because I love busting myths or confirming them. If something like that is true, we need to know about it. But if they're fake, then certainly we need to know, because it can affect what we do to prepare. So drink up.